today is the day we get to change from sewing to quilting. So let's talk about what you need. You need your quilt. Here it is, all folded up, ready to go. Pin from last week. And then you're going to want these lovely guys. These are called grab-a-roos. They are not required, but they are fantastic. They have these little grippies all over them. And what it allows you to do is grip the quilt while you're pushing it through. So they're fantastic. All you need are these two things, plus some thread, your little scissors, and your sewing machine, as well as a little arm muscle today, and we will get started. All right, see you soon. Hey everyone, I thought I would show you on our little mini quilt here, kind of the game plan overall for the quilt. It's a little easier for me to show you on this model as opposed to the large quilt. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch along our stitch lines of our main blocks, and we're going to stitch in the ditch. And what that means is that you just stitch right along the seam line and you almost just hide the stitching. Sometimes it hides a little better than others depending on the fabric, but you can kind of see what you're going for here. So with that said, what you want to do is you want to make sure you start in the middle of the quilt and work your way out kind of in a clockwise fashion. So what I mean by that is you want to make sure that as you're quilting, you are evenly spacing everything so you don't get any bunches or creases or anything of that nature. So the first thing we would do is start in the center here, stitch all the way down, and then I would rotate the quilt, stitch in the center here, all the way down, and this is where the clockwise comes in. You don't have to do it clockwise, but it just helps me. And then I'm going to stitch this side, rotate again, stitch this side, and if you'll notice each time you do this, the side that's going to be on the arm side of your sewing machine, it gets less and less. You help alleviate bulk this way as well. Now, some people believe in the center you start from the very center and work your way out on the first ones just to give you your center point. I haven't really found that to be 100% necessary, but you can do whatever you feel like. Now, if you want to go crazy, by all means you can stitch around these little squares here, stitching in the ditch, but the beginning pattern gives you a good grid on the back and will completely secure your quilt as much as possible without doing free motion. So, okay, here's kind of a close-up on the stitch in the ditch. I apologize if the camera gets a little shaky. It's really awkward, but let's just go, I'll just go pretty slow so you can see how I'm stitching in the ditch. Notice how I'm just going straight through the line, lining up this little arrow right with the stitch line. Normally you have a much flatter surface, but because I'm holding a camera here too, it's a little crowded. Okay, hopefully you get the idea. See you in a bit. Now we are at the machine. Hopefully you can see everything okay. The angles for the camera are a little odd the way we have to do this today. But since I just showed you how we're going to do it on our mini quilt, I'm going to take our big quilt and kind of show you the ranks with that. So what you're going to do, it's always better to have it kind of folded with you. And then you can unroll it as you need to. So then you're not having a huge amount of fabric all set up on you. So what we're going to do is just kind of unfold this and find our middle spot. So we're just going to stitch our main blocks right along here like we discussed earlier. So I'm going to gauge kind of the middle. If you're not in the perfect center, it's not a big deal. You're going to go up, down, all around. We're going to do a lot of different directions, but one thing you want to note is you probably want your stitch length a little wider so it's not gathering and pulling, and it moves much more easily because we have 3 layers of fabric now. I also changed out my presser foot from the 1/4 inch because you no longer need to worry about a 1/4 inch, and I changed it to a clear presser foot so I can see all the fabric below me and can see my stitching line. So what we're going to do is you don't want your batting to run under or over your teeth on your sewing machine because you don't want the fibers to get caught up in there, and then it could be a mess all over your needle and everything. So what I always do is I just fold over this side, then I just kind of, we'll see if this camera gets in the way of the quilt, but we'll just, or the quilt gets in the way of the camera, but we'll just pull this through, and then I just place my needle in at the start. There's a couple things you can do. You can back stitch if you want, so you can come in here and go in and then back stitch it. I don't personally do that because when we bind the quilt, we're going to have another row of stitching coming across, and it's going to anchor that for us. So all we're going to do is line up this little tiny arrow on our presser foot, and we are just going to slowly stitch on in between the stitch lines. This is why you want a really nice even press on all of your blocks. You're just going to stitch literally in the ditch of the two lines. Go as slow as you need to. Don't worry, sometimes you might mess up a little bit. It's not always going to be perfect. This is your first quilt, remember. None of mine are ever 100% perfect either. If you'll notice, I'm not pulling particularly on the quilt. You're just going to grip it, kind of hold it flat, and just guide it through. Just guide it through, stop, lay it out flat, make sure it's flat, and then just kind of work it through. And then you'll see that you'll start to get the stitch lines, and then on the back you can start to see them as well. Okay, so the game plan is you're going to stitch down the middle, just reiterating what we just went through. Then you're going to rotate it, stitch down the middle on the other side, rotate it, work your way out in rotations. The reason we do the center first is so we can smooth out any little nook and cranny we might have, so we don't get any bubbles or creases. Some people even take it to the extreme and start in the dead center of the quilt. I personally don't necessarily see a need for that. So one other thing I want to mention is that as you start going through here, you're going to get a bunch of fabric bunched up. Just take a second and just push it through. You're not going to break the quilts or anything. This is why we start in the center as well, because no matter what, eventually you are going to get less and less and less bunched up in the arm of your quilt. So we'll keep going here for a little bit, just so you can see how I kind of work through this. Some people like to roll their quilts too. Either way is fine. You will find the method that works best for you. And I say, find your method, go with it, and you will be totally happy with your results. The key though is just keep going slow. It's not a race. Remember, we've pinned, we've basted this. So if you need to take a break, only do a little bit a night, go for it. It's there, it's ready for you to come back. Each stitch you do just gets it anchored that much more. Okay, so as you can see, we've got all of this already done. Pull this over, find our stitch line, wherever that is, right here. You can see I'm just gonna have little white stitches. Some people like to match their bottom thread. Maybe you want to do red or something. I kind of want to see the stitches on the back of this one, so to counteract the hexes. So I'm leaving it white. All right, see you in a little bit.